Hi, welcome to the Metal Detecting Show, episode number 31. My name is Kieran and I have been metal detecting for nearly 30 years. This week I had the pleasure of interviewing DirtFishMish coming from the land down under. Mish is an ambassador for the hobby in Australia and produces some great content, so make sure to subscribe to her YouTube channel, DirtFishMish. Link is in the show notes. So let's get on with the show. Hey, before we start, I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope you like the show this week. If you want to give me feedback or interact with the show, please reach out to me on Twitter at DetectingThe or Instagram at The Metal Detecting Podcast, or if you want to pop me an email to kieran@themetaldetectingshow.com. And now, if you'd like to leave me a voicemail, please do so on speakpipe/The Metal Detecting Show. The link will be in the show notes. And lastly, if you like this content, please don't hesitate to tell your friends. And if you do anything today, remember to hit that subscribe button, either on any podcast directory of your choice, but now available on YouTube. Link is in the show notes. Coming to you today from a land down under, literally the other side of the world, ladies and gentlemen, DirtFishMish. Good morning, Mish. How are you
Good
today?
morning. I'm well, thank you. And yourself?
Thanks for agreeing to partake. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So we'll start with something really easy, and I always do this. If you want to just take the opportunity to do all your shout outs at the very start, in case people turn off after about 5 minutes.
Oh, no, I hope they don't do that. I'll keep it fairly generic because I would absolutely hate to miss someone. But basically, anyone I've met along this journey, digitally or in person, my YouTube subscribers have been amazing. But friends that I've made through YouTube as well, Instagram, Detector Network, and all the detecting groups I participate in on Facebook. So, hello, everyone.
Great stuff. You're in quite the gamut of all the social medias there.
I talk too much,
I
maybe.
think you have to. Well, this is the form for talking too much, so go for it. So you're quite new to the hobby, I think, in relative terms. So how did you get started? How did you get into the hobby?
Yeah, sure. So I've only been in the hobby for about 2 years now. It didn't start through a love of or an interest in detecting as such. It was actually more coins. So my great grandfather, who he passed when I was quite young, but I did know him for a little while there, was an avid coin collector. So loved his Australian coins. He'd collect one for every year, but not just. So let's just say there was a year that had coins minted at 3 different locations. He would collect all 3 variants of those for that year. He did it not only for himself, but he also created an album for both my father and for me. So, ultimately, I've ended up inherited this album and just going through the old Australian coins. It was just so fascinating. There was a lot of gaps because obviously I was the third person in line to get a set. So I guess I looked at detecting as a way that maybe I can actually go and fill some of these gaps myself. I was watching a little bit of it on YouTube. I tentatively joined a couple of Facebook groups just to learn a little bit more about the hobby, see what people were actually finding. And it kind of went from there. I ended up buying just a cheap detector. It was a Minelab Go Find, just the base model. It was an interesting little unit, but I certainly found a few things with it. And then at the start of this year, I thought, no, look, I'm starting to take this seriously now. I'd like to upgrade. So again, pitched out to the Facebook groups that I was watching and said, hey guys, I'm not sure at this point whether I'm going to stick with it long term or not. I see you guys are all using Equinoxes. That was kind of the dream machine. Is anyone offloading one secondhand? And there was this lovely gentleman who contacted me. He'd actually been saving an Equinox 600 for his kids. The kids were showing no interest whatsoever. So he said, look, I'll do you a deal on this. Long story short, I've ended up with his Nox, and I haven't looked back, honestly. The first month I probably found more finds than I found for the entire previous year with the Go Find. So yeah, it's just been onward and upward from there.
That's a very common theme. I think in a couple of my interviews, people have bought off guys on Facebook or guys in the forum or in clubs just to get them going, which is great. We know you metal detect, right? But what else do you get up to? What else do you do?
First and foremost, I'm a mum. So most of my time is basically dealing with a teenage daughter, which is certainly quite the roller coaster. But getting out and about metal detecting is probably the most interesting thing in my life right now, let's be honest.
It is what it is. I'm the
Yeah.
exact same. So you come across as environmentally conscious. I mean, you talk about take three for the sea. Can you explain what that is?
Yes. So take three for the sea. There is an organisation attached to it, but the basic principle is whenever you go to the beach, take three pieces of trash with you as you leave the beach. If not more, of course. But the idea is to be conscious of the environment. Remove not only what you've brought to the beach, but try and do a little bit extra as well. And if we all collectively did that, the world would be a much better and cleaner place. I wouldn't call myself an eco warrior or anything by any means, but I've sort of noticed because I primarily detect beaches, just how much junk was getting wedged between the rocks, left under the sand, left up in the
Yeah.
dunes. So yeah, it really makes you so conscious of the need to do your part.
Yeah. I generally find that, you know, you don't feel great about not finding anything, but when you're dumping the rubbish in the bin, you kind of go, you know what? I did a little bit of good today, you know?
Absolutely.
Another phrase I've heard is you've coined the phrase the mental health hunt. I have talked about this before on the podcast, and I'm a firm believer that metal detecting is a huge part of people whose detects mental health program. Is that
Hmm.
something that's a part of your day to day that you use metal detecting to help with a positive mental health?
Yes, 100%. So that's a benefit I didn't even see coming, if I'm honest, when I took
Mhm.
up the hobby. Um, and yeah, once I got the Equinox, I started using headphones with it. Now that's been an absolute game changer for me. Not so much because I can hear the minor nuances of the beeps, different volumes, that sort of thing, but more so the fact that because I was now so intently concentrating on those beeps, on those tones, I was finding that it was just sort of blocking everything else out. And I was really just tuning out, taking in the fresh air, the beautiful coastline. I'm really lucky where I am. We've got
Mhm.
such scenic environment, but yeah, it just really allowed me just to switch off. So any finds are a bonus. I don't go out specifically to look for amazing treasures. I do get lucky occasionally, of course, but the main thing for me now is just, yeah, finding that balance, being able to switch off for a few hours.
Yeah, super important. You've mentioned YouTube, and we'll talk about YouTube for the next few minutes. But is social media a big part of the hobby for you?
It wasn't initially. It is now. It definitely is now. But certainly when I began with my little Go Find, I put a few photos up on my Instagram, which back then was just my personal Instagram account. It was full of pictures of my dogs and whatever I was eating
Mhm.
for the day. That's a typical Instagram
Yeah,
account.
yeah,
Um, yeah, but people started taking an interest in that. Obviously, as I started finding things, I was posting them to Facebook groups as well, and I was getting that feedback there too. These days, I actually moderate a detecting group on Facebook.
mm,
So I find that now, yeah, it's quite an integral part of what I do, and especially now with the whole YouTube side of things, it's just skyrocketing at this point.
that's brilliant. So what made you get into YouTube?
Can I say boredom? No,
Yeah, absolutely.
what actually happened was, earlier this year, so around about March, when COVID started, expanding quite
Mm.
rapidly, and everything started shutting down nationwide in Australia. So I actually work in the recreation industry, and that was the first one to be on the chopping block. So I went from having three jobs within a week. All three of them had closed. So I had
Wow.
literally nothing I could do. I wasn't even taking my daughter to school because we were all doing the learning from home.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I needed something to occupy my mind,
Mm.
something that I guess took me away from mum duties for a little while as well. We couldn't even detect at that point. The restrictions were that
Wow.
tight. So yeah, I hummed and ahed and looked into how to create a YouTube channel because I did watch a little bit of YouTube. So I thought, oh well, I've got a little bit of video editing skills. Let's see what I can do with this. So once we were finally allowed to start detecting again, several weeks down the track, I filmed a couple of things, and it was just with my iPhone. I just used iMovie on my iPhone, just a free video
Yeah.
editing, and just chucked it up. I mean, the audio was terrible, everything was shaky, but it was something. I got some very positive feedback from that because I did share, they were beach hunts initially, and I shared them with my beach groups that I chatted in.
Hmm.
And it was just so positive. I thought, no, right, I might see if I can buy a secondhand GoPro. Let's give this a proper go. And just onward and upward. I think, yeah, now I've got two GoPros. I'm doing multiple hunts a week that I record.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm pretty much capping it at that now because I understand I've got to keep that work life balance as well. Um, Bearing in mind that some of my workplaces are starting to reopen. So, yeah, crazy year.
What is the COVID situation like in Australia right now?
So it's not too bad where I live specifically, but certainly there's certain areas in the country that are still in pretty much full lockdown. We're lucky at this point; we can go out and detect. There's still pretty strict social distancing regulations, and we can't congregate in groups of, I think it's more than 10 now. We're only allowed two visitors to the home per day, that sort of thing. But it's all stuff that we can work around now. I think we've got that balance back.
Yeah, that's good. We're just about to enter again our second
Mm.
nearly full lockdown again. So in our full lockdown, we were maximum 5 kilometers from our house and no mixing with anybody.
Yeah.
But now we're going probably the same again with masks, the whole lot. Now we do wear masks and all that, like yourselves.
Mm.
I suppose I'm lucky enough. I have a beach within 2-3 kilometers from me, but it's more of a mental health hunt beach than an actual find anything that's good beach. So, do you think you'll keep going with the channel and all the content once COVID wraps up?
Yeah, it's absolutely my intention to. So at the moment, I'm kind of looking at my work life balance, seeing what I can sort of push and shove around. As I definitely like to keep YouTubing as part of it. Obviously, I've still got to put food on the table too, but I'm
Yeah,
fortunate enough that I've got a little bit of leeway there. So we'll keep at it. But
sure.
yeah, definitely planning to build on what I've already created. Certainly next year, I'm looking at incorporating travel into it as
Yeah.
restrictions permit. Hopefully, some trips interstate to catch up with some detectorists that I really admire from the other states as well. But yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, that's all you can do, really, isn't it? I have noticed the now travel vlog flavor coming into the channel. Is that something that you're planning on doing more of? I mean, you just said you were going to travel Australia, the continent, I suppose, go visit more detectorists. But I mean, the camping video, that was pretty cool. Are
Oh,
you going to
thank
do
you.
more of that?
Possibly a little bit more of that. I think I'd still like to keep some sort of treasure hunting, detecting element in most of the videos. The camping one I put up recently, yeah, that was a bit of a diversion. The main reasons why it didn't have detecting in it, one, it was a private property.
Mm.
Two, we weren't actually allowed to detect in that river because it feeds a town's water source. Um, but three, I couldn't actually fit the detector in the car. So that was the true reason,
Yeah.
let's be honest.
The
Um,
traditional camping trip where you can't get anything into the car.
that's right.
Yeah, and your family feature prominently in the content. How do they feel about the whole YouTube thing?
Look, I think I'm gaining some street cred by my daughter seeing me as a YouTuber. It's good advice to parents out there. Suddenly, you might become cool if you're a YouTuber. It hasn't worked for everyone. I've talked to a few other YouTubers, and their kids won't even talk to them. But yeah, my husband's been really wonderful with it as well. So he's detected with me. I wouldn't call him a detectorist. I think he does it so that he can actually spend time with me instead of me just leaving the house all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's starting to get the bug now, I think. Fingers crossed, as long as he doesn't keep beating me on fines, I'll be happy.
Well, he found a couple of good silver coins there recently, didn't he? In one of the videos.
He did really, really well, actually. So he found that was about his third hunt out, and I think he found two silver florins, which is just an absolute dream coin to find in Australia. They're a beautiful coin. But yeah, two in one hunt, straight after the other. couldn't believe it, but, yeah, at the
Yeah,
time, I was a little bit, okay." But, now I'm really happy for him whenever he finds something. He's yet to find his first ring, so that's the goal now.
that's the goal. Yeah, I haven't found silver in a while now, and I'm starting to get the ick about it. I'm like, oh god. On to detecting.
Mhm.
First of all, I see you putting your hands into bushes. Don't you know everything in Australia is trying to kill you? Is there any special precautions you're taking when you're hunting?
Yes, everything in Australia is out to kill us, but I think that kind of makes Australians more resilient to a degree. I do get a lot of backlash with that, so it's interesting that you touch on it. I have
Really?
had a bunch of comments, particularly with glove wearing. So there are a lot of videos where I'm not wearing gloves. I do in some. There's a few reasons for it. So particularly with my hunting around rocks, I can't actually feel the difference between a coin and a shell unless I'm using my fingertips. That has
Yeah,
backfired on me occasionally. I've had my fingers cut, that sort of thing. It is a risk versus reward thing. But also, the other fact is if you're wearing mostly cloth or leather gloves and you're trying to turn a GoPro on and off, you actually drown the
yeah,
GoPro every time you go to push the button. The water gets all over the lens, that sort of thing. So it's kind of a sacrifice I have to make for the video quality to some extent.
yeah. I was doing that very same thing today. Like, I was taking off the glove and then putting on the glove, and I was just like, oh my
Yep.
god, why do I do it? Have you ever sort of, I mean, snake spiders, anything like that, when you put your hand into the bush, or
um,
does that even happen?
But I've been bitten by a couple of ants. We've got some pretty nasty bitey ants here. No, look, snakes, generally speaking, they're more afraid of us than we are of them. So I do see a lot of them when I'm detecting. I'm yet to actually catch one on film. Um, but yeah, they don't tend to bother you. If you see them from a way off, you just don't continue to approach them and they'll turn around and they'll go about their own way. There's very
Yeah.
few of them that are actually aggressive and that will chase you.
Okay. Okay. Phew, I can rest easy. So what's the law like in Australia then in relation to the hobby?
Yeah, so there are a lot of grey areas. Generally speaking, Crown land, so public land is okay. Um, National parks generally not okay unless there's a specific exemption. State parks can be a bit 50-50, and the legislation will vary state to state. So each state has their own equivalent of a mining right permit. So certainly if you're
Okay.
going fossicking, prospecting, you really do need to look into those permits. I've gotten the relevant permit for my state, but again, it's such a grey area. If I go to a state park or something and they have a public campground, you know, technically they might not allow fossicking and prospecting, but what if I'm just looking for coins on the surface? It's
Yeah.
really is quite grey in some areas. But yeah, there's a lot of public land that's fine. Generally speaking, beaches are fine too. Certain councils may have their own specific objections in their parks. There's some that absolutely outright ban any form of digging, which is fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a case of just sort of checking with each area as you go, I think.
And getting permission then, do you just stay on public land, beaches, or do you actually go around and get permission or go out of your way to get permission?
Permissions is a relatively new area for me. So, yeah, generally speaking, I
Mm,
do stick to public land and beaches. I'm not short of beach options where I am. So, I like to lurk on those. I do have a couple of permissions, but they are, via family. So, I haven't really
okay.
mustered up the courage yet to, to go out and knock on some
Yeah.
doors and pop some letters in boxes and that sort of thing. There are a
Yeah.
few friends of mine in the local area that do it with great success. But I think that's probably a confidence thing on my part too. So it's something I would love to explore more as I
So piggyback on their permissions, just
go.
buy them
Well,
buy them a beer,
I don't think they'd like me very much if I did that.
especially if you're taking out silver florins and stuff like that.
Too right.
So give us a quick history lesson of the area.
All right. So I live in the history of my area is quite industrial. So there's probably about 150 years of history where I live. So bear in mind, most of Australia doesn't have much more than about 250. It's like late 1700s before you started getting any Western history here. Prior to that, a lot of the historical finds that you'll find are not metallic. Um,
Okay.
Aboriginal artifacts and the like. But yeah, we've got about 150 years of white history where I am. So the oldest coin I've found would be mid 1800s. And I do typically find them around the beach areas because a lot of the settlements back in that time were
Mhm.
coastal. We had a couple of very active ports at the time. Some are gone, some are just no longer used for commercial purposes. So there's quite a lot of history to be found, particularly along our coastline here.
Yeah, I'm amazed with the quality of the coins that are coming out from the beach. Maybe it's just a testament to the quality of the coins we have here in Ireland, but I mean, they're coming out in Australia very well preserved. Um, God, there'd be balls of rust for me if when I take them out because they are. It sounds like you have a royal existence, really, to be honest.
Yeah, look, on the quality though, that they do vary a little bit more than possibly what I've shown on YouTube. I do get quite a lot of sandblasted coins that you're just not going to be able to
Yeah,
establish what they are, particularly the old copper coins. If they've been in the salt water, they do corrode, they do get that copper cancer. And
yeah,
unfortunately, it's broken my heart a lot of times when I've pulled out this amazing 100-year-old coin and you just look at it and you go, look, there's just
yeah.
no way I'm going to be able to salvage this one. There's a lot of rocky beaches where I am too, so I do poke around those a lot, and quite often, whatever coin's been dropped has been held in place for 80, 100 years. So it just doesn't have that wear and tear as if it were in the tide line. But also, I
Hmm.
try and get a little bit creative with my hunts. So I'll go up in behind the dunes, and I've found 1920s coins just sitting there, just below the surface in the sand, up in those. So I think it's just about sort of moving beyond the typical areas that a detectorist would search on a beach.
Yeah, I agree. Today, I was out this morning, and normally I just hit the beach, and I just happened to see this public jacks, like pisser,
Yep.
right? And I said, you know what? I'm going to go over here now, and there's a little river behind it, and I went in behind the jacks, and I pulled out about 10 different coins from the US. Bear in mind, I'm in Ireland, right? So
Mhm.
from the US, from England, some Irish coins as well, all in the space of about 2 hours. And I was like, going, I would have never thought of going in behind there now.
Well, sometimes it's good to try those areas because, if it's less appealing for someone to go in there and check it out, then there's a good chance it hasn't been hunted.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
I'm trying to
There
make you
was a
feel
few
better.
moments. Yeah, thanks. No, no, no. It was pretty. Yeah, yeah. Straight to the shower. Anyways, I see you're using the Equinox and the Pulse Dive pinpointer.
Mhm.
And the reason I'm asking this question because I have the exact same too, the Equinox and the Pulse Find. Um, so why did you pick that combo?
All right. So Equinox was basically because it was the dream machine, and everyone was recommending to go to that for a coin and relic machine within the budget I had. The Pulse Dive was pretty much because I spend my time at the beach. I wanted one that performed well in saltwater conditions, but also the advantage of the Pulse Dive is that scuba coil head. So while
Yeah.
I haven't used that too much, admittedly, at this point, we're coming into summer here, and I'm looking to take that in the water, do a bit of snorkel diving. I did trial it a little bit pre COVID, but unfortunately, everything shut down. It went into winter and
Yeah.
it just didn't work. But yeah, really keen to get out there and do some snorkeling with it, see what I can find with it.
Yeah, I've taken a snorkeling. All right, it was great. Very successful, I have to say, the few times I've used it. But the reason I asked this question was more to lead into this question.
Mhm.
And it's a problem I'm having with them. And it might be a case of read the FM, read the flipping manual. But do you find that the pulse dive interferes with the Equinox?
Okay, so yes and no. So when I got it, yes, it did straight away. Um,
Yeah.
there's the two ways you can combat it. Dependent on which device you want to tackle first. So the obvious one is the noise cancel. So have the pulse dive on, and then do your noise cancel on your Nox while it's on. Generally
Oh,
speaking,
okay.
that will stop it there. But the pulse dive itself, you can actually cycle through, I think it's like 20 or 40 different, I don't know if it's frequencies or not, but 20 or so
Yeah,
different settings.
frequencies. Yeah.
Yeah. So that you can actually cancel it on that end as well. So I actually ended up doing a combination of both, because my husband has a pulse dive as well. So we didn't want to run them at the same frequency.
Yeah.
So I shifted mine a couple of notches, and then we just noise cancel with them on if it's causing any grief. But yeah, you can get around it pretty quickly.
Yeah. So maybe I should have read the manual. I find that if I leave when I dig my hole
Mhm.
and I leave the coil from my Equinox down on the ground, when I get down to put the pulse dive in, I find that it goes off at the corner, say the direction to the coil is. So I end up having to move the coil another
Yeah.
5-6 feet away, and I'm like, and I'm struggling with it. To be honest, I lost my Garrett, and I'm struggling with this one at the minute. But I definitely need to read the manual, I think.
Yeah, no, you
Um,
definitely need to move the detector away when you crouch. You'll actually see me do that. It's probably like every third or fourth video I'll crouch down.
yeah.
The pulse dive's going absolutely nuts before I've even gotten it near the
Okay.
hole. So yeah, you'll see me kind of kick the detector off to the side.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah,
I'm
they're
glad it's
both
not just me.
they're both sensitive little units. So yeah.
The carbon fiber handle on your beach scoop. That's an inspired idea. Where'd you get that from? I want one.
So when I actually ordered that scoop, it's a Cedo brand scoop. The store, so they're an Australian-based company. They actually have the carbon handles in their store. So that was just a case of I already knew how much lighter my Nox was after
Mhm.
adding a carbon shaft to that. So it was a bit of a no-brainer to go one of those for the scoop as well. We do have another Cedo scoop. We've got a fiberglass handle on that. It does the job as well, but it's just that little bit heavier again. But yeah, absolute game changer. Highly recommend it, especially with those heavy scoops, because that particular scoop, the one with the carbon handle in my videos, is 1.5 kilo. So yeah, it's
Wow.
quite a heavy little unit.
Yeah. My scoop is pretty heavy. It's a stainless steel job. I've a wooden hickory handle on it,
Oh
and
yeah,
I really do suffer from scoop fade, I suppose,
yeah.
well, lack of strength in it. But how much was it, if you don't mind me asking?
It was around about $100 Australian. So that'll obviously be less in pounds US, that sort of thing.
$900
No,
Australian.
no, 90 to 100. Sorry.
All right, I was like, oh
Good
my
lord.
god. I was like, Jesus Christ. Anyways, okay, so 90 to 100. Okay, I can work it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great idea. See, though, get them out in Europe, get them out there because I think it's really good. Bucket listers, top finds. The 1911 Florin, I think, was definitely one of the favorites of mine on the channel. But give us your bucket listers and what's left to find.
Yeah, look, honestly, that florin was right up there. So with our Australian silver coins, there was kind of two phases of them, and I think it might have been the same over in the UK as well. So the ones that were sort of pre mid 1940s were 925 silver, and then beyond that, they became a 50% silver blend. It was just a bit too expensive to do sort of post World War II, so they cheapened the composition a little bit. Yeah, that was an absolute bucket lister. I love those older style florins, and that one was in amazing condition for
Mhm.
beach and nearly
Yeah,
110-year-old. Um,
amazing.
as far as one of my most amazing finds, and it's not an amazing find in itself, but about 2 weeks into owning the Equinox, I was doing a dry sand hunt. This was before I was confident enough to get down into the waterline, and I found an 18 karat gold ring.
Mm,
And it was an absolute chunky thing. It was just a band, but absolutely solid as. So I did the right thing, being that it could have been a fresh drop. I took it straight to the police station. Now, in terms of legislation here with theft by finding and the like in Australia, it does vary state by state. In my state, you hand it into a police station, they hold on to it for 3 months. And if it's not claimed by the rightful owner, you can have it back. So you can put in that intent to claim. That was the 3 longest months of my life. But it wasn't claimed. So I did end up with that ring back.
Can you explain that to me again? Theft by finding? This is a new
Yeah.
concept
So,
for me.
yeah, I think there is similar legislation in other countries. But basically, with theft by finding, the idea is if you find an item of value and you hold on to it without any attempt to find the rightful owner, then you can be charged with theft. So
Oh.
there's a couple of criteria to meet, and again, it varies state by state in Australia. But the main thing is, you make an attempt to find the owner. So that might be handing to the police station, which was appropriate in this case. Obviously, if I find something like a $20 ring,
Mhm.
I'm not going to go through that full documentation process. However, my approach to that is to go on social media. If it's something that's unique, be it
Yeah.
engraved, that sort of thing, I might be able to proactively contact some people. But otherwise, just keeping an eye out for lost
Mhm.
posts, that sort of thing. But a lot of the stuff I find tends to be quite old anyway. So even if I did hand it into a police station, the chance of the owner coming in that 3-month period is slim to none. But I don't sell any of my finds, so every ring I've ever found is in my collection here
Mhm.
at home. If someone did put up a post years down the track going, "Oh, I wonder what happened to this," there is that chance I'll find it
Yeah.
because, again, I'm sort of checking week by week for those lost posts. But yes, I highly recommend if anyone loses something, put up a post saying it was missing, but don't give out every piece of information. Don't give exactly where it was, that sort of thing. Just, hey, I lost a silver ring near this town, you know,
Mhm.
and it's got this unique marking.
Yeah.
Something like that. Allow us to get those fines back to you, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the motto of global metal detectors is always try and return it, always.
Yeah.
The metal detecting gods will not look on you favorably if you don't even make an effort on it. So last question, and I
Mhm.
always finish up with this question. So what do you wish you knew before you started metal detecting as a hobby?
I guess I probably wish I knew how much it would take over my life. No, actually, I probably don't wish I knew that because, it's probably a good thing that it's become what it has, and I wouldn't have wanted to be
Mm.
scared off by it. But no, I think the pleasure of this hobby is just learning as you go. So I think if I knew anything prior to taking up, that would kind of take the shine off it. It's kind of nice to go through the trial and error process.
Thanks so much, Mish. DirtFishMish on YouTube and Instagram. Don't forget to check them out. And that's it now. Mish, thanks very
Awesome.
much.
Thank you very much for your time.
And that's it for this week's show. I hope you like this episode of the Metal Detecting Show podcast. Check out and please subscribe to Mish's channel on YouTube and on Instagram. Both links will be in the show notes. Check out our website www.themetaldetectingshow.com for this episode's show notes. Check out our Patreon page if you want to help the podcast stay alive or just want to buy me a copy. Just search for the Metal Detecting Show. The link is in the show notes. If you feel like taking your appreciation to the next level, feel free to leave me a positive review on any podcast directory of your choice. If you like this content and would like more, please don't hesitate to tell your friends and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Once again, I hope you enjoyed this episode and we will chat to you all again next week. Get out there, eyes down, and happy hunting.